But it's only us two. It's only us two, right?
Yes.
It's
So
only
good
us.
afternoon. You're in South Africa. I'm in India, so it's evening time. So good afternoon, Ansgar Pabst. So I hope I'm pronouncing it right. But yeah, so it's great to see you here. And you can start a presentation. After the presentation, I'd ask you a few questions. That's about it.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. I'm happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to take you through my dissertation. Yes, my name is Ansgar Pabst, and I'm presenting you today my doctoral research on overcoming barriers for large organizations in emerging markets.
Okay.
And the study really explores how businesses can scale sustainable, profitable, and inclusive models despite deep-rooted structural asymmetries. And let me share the presentation. I prepared a presentation. You need to allow me to share, please, Doctor. I
Yeah, I've done
sent the
that.
request. Is that coming through?
Yes.
Can you see the slide?
Yeah, I can see the slide.
Okay, fantastic. Okay. Hopefully by the end of the presentation, Doctor, you will see how the 7A strategy framework and the role of Chief Alignment Officer offers a transformative solution for corporate companies in emerging market.
Okay.
So why does it really matter? That's the first question that I've asked myself. Companies worldwide are under pressure to integrate sustainability, inclusion, and profitability, but I felt that existing frameworks failed to deliver scalable solution. Okay. And according to a 2023 McKinsey report, 70% of corporate social initiatives fail because they aren't integrated into business strategy. And this research provides a model, hopefully, that helps firms to overcome the challenge. And to understand why this research is critical, we first need to examine the challenges that businesses face in emerging markets. Okay, and that brings me to the first model that I've developed, which is the emerging market innovators uh, dilemma of invert priorities. So businesses I found struggle really to engage BOP, business base of pyramid markets, due to structural symmetries, gaps in infrastructure, regulation, and cultural alignment. And existing models fail really because they treat profitability, inclusion, and sustainability as separate priorities, creating execution gaps that I feel really hinder real impact. And to succeed, companies really must adopt an innovation mindset to rethink business model and bridge the top of pyramid profits focus with the base of pyramids need for sustainability and inclusion. And that's really where the top and bottom divide comes in. The corporate strategy focus typically on structured short-term profitability and efficiency, where the BOP markets operate through informal community-driven economies, leading to misaligned priorities. So there's a tension between the two groups and a set of invert priorities. And that really brings us to the core question or the core research question that guided that study. And the core research questions are really about how can top companies integrate profitability, inclusion, and sustainability? How do structural symmetries hinder market engagement, and how can they be addressed? And thirdly, how can businesses scale sustainable and profitable business BOP, base of pyramid business model? And answering these questions really requires an in-depth understanding of why existing frameworks fall short. And as an example, I just would like to give typical Western ESG models in emerging markets. Many global firms, as you know, launch ESG initiatives, but without local adaptation, they really fail to create impact. And one positive example or exemption to that rule is Unilever's base of pyramid strategy in India and other places because it's quite a structured approach that embeds cultural adaptation, and this research examines how similar approaches can be scaled. So I was guided by the success stories of some of the big company. So now let's explore in a bit more detail why current approaches have struggled to provide viable solution. Okay, so these are really the five theoretical models that form quite a significant part of the presentation of the dissertation. And as I said before, many business framework focus on short-term profitability or corporate social responsibility, but few integrate both. Okay, and existing models fail to address what I call the execution gap, the disconnect between the right leadership strategy and on-the-ground implementation, and that includes organizational design. And this research proposes a structured approach that bridges the gap. And once again, a practical example, a DBA is always practical, is how Coca-Cola has successfully scaled by creating manual distribution centers in Africa, but also here in South Africa that leverage actually local entrepreneurs. And this case shows how companies that design for structural gaps can in fact scale profitably. And to build a stronger and relevant framework for emerging market, this research really integrates these key strategic models. So, getting into more details of the three key models that formed really the base of the research, and the research and that analyzed the base of pyramid engagement barrier. There's obviously the 4A framework, Prahalad's 4A framework that helps us identify market entry factors, but I felt it lacked some execution depth. Then there's the McKinsey's three horizons and McGrath's early warning model that help firms anticipate disruptions and adapt their business models proactively, but it's predominantly written from a top of the pyramid point of view. And I always felt that the solution, and we will present the 7A framework later on, is at the intersection of these three frameworks, and I will show and share that with you later on. So some examples of where this comes to play is Kodak, the former leader of annual photography, completely ignored Horizon 3 innovations, even though they were the biggest holder of digital photography patents. They just decided not to act upon it, and that led ultimately to its downfall. And instead of shifting its focus to future market needs, it doubled down on an outdated model. And these research really applies these three frameworks to base of pyramid market scaling, showing how companies can avoid similar mistakes. So the underlying question is really, how can business balance short-term financial priorities with long-term market adaptability? And this brings us now to the next slide. Let's explore the literature that informs this study. So it's very important that we build on existing knowledge, okay? And that's why the literature review evaluated quite thoroughly, I felt, the key theories, but also the limitations in the base of pyramid market contacts. There we use a lot of empirical, or I used a lot of empirical studies, insights from companies like Unilever, Shakti, M-Pesa in Africa, and Danone Grameen in Bangladesh, and that provides us insights really of how successful bottom of pyramid engaged strategies work. However, these cases highlight some of the challenges in scaling and due to leadership misalignment and lack of structural integration. And one good example is here in Africa of mobile money. There were two providers. The one was called M-Pesa and the other one was called Airtel Money. And M-Pesa really thrived because it adapted to local informal economies, and Airtel Money failed due to the application of rigid corporate structures. And this really demonstrates why strategic frameworks must include cultural adaptation and leadership alignment. So what can we learn from the global firms? What can global firms learn from the successful BOP strategies in Africa and Asia? And now I would like to examine the research methodology used to explore these insights. And doctors, you will know that we adopted our approach somewhat. Originally, I planned to. It always said we, you, and I. I planned to follow a mixed methods approach, but within a few interviews, I realized that qualitative methods were much better suited to explore leadership dynamics, in particular cultural adaptation. And so we expanding the interview scope from only top executives, that was our original plan, to bottom of pyramid stakeholders to allow for richer understanding of market realities and informal economic structures. We also know, and we highlighted that before, that many corporate strategies fail, in fact, in emerging markets because they don't factor in local cultural dynamics. Okay, so now that's really, now that we have established the rationale for this change, for this research approach, I would like to explore how thematic analysis in particular helped to extract key insights. So thematic analysis, as you know, is central to this research, and it allowed me to move beyond the surface level observation to identify patterns in executive decision-making, corporate adaptation, but also cultural subtleties that otherwise would have remained undiscovered. And this ensured really that qualitative insights are structured into actionable themes, making them systematically derived rather than anecdotal. That was very important, that we get the statement and the facts and the data to basically propose the frameworks that we proposed afterwards. So for me, it was important that we had a quite structured process, starting with the data collection, which is semi-structured interviews, and that, I must say, it generated some really rich qualitative insights that surveys or quantitative methods might have missed. And there's actually a cultural benefit in South Africa. I had the benefit to be a foreigner in South Africa, being German. The base of pyramid interviewees gave me a different level of insight that they would have not afforded to a local South African researcher. So I was really blessed with that insight. So these interviews that really identified common adaptation challenges across different executive perspectives, but also base of pyramid perspectives. So from the data collection, then we really started with the thematic analysis, or it was part of the thematic analysis, but then we systematically categorized executive responses through a coding framework, and then through intercoder reliability, we ensured really consistency and objectivity in interpretation, and then we derived or extracted key insight and emerging themes on strategy, decision-making, and market adaptation. And as an example, if multiple executives or multiple interviewees highlighted organizational misalignment as a barrier, we were then able to categorize it as a key structural challenge within the 7A framework. And that's exactly what happened. Okay, so now that we have seen how the key patterns emerge through the thematic analysis, I would like us to explore quickly how these insights shape the research outcome. Okay, so this is one of the models that I developed. It's called the innovation bridge. It has, as we said before, innovation at the center of the transformational drive, but the findings confirm that structural asymmetries such as weak supply chain and financial exclusion remain the biggest barriers to base of pyramid market. But crucially, we also found that companies that embed cultural adaptation and innovation tend to scale more efficiently. However, leadership misalignment often results in fragmented execution, preventing long-term scalability. And that brings us back to the emerging market innovators dilemma. There is two examples again here in Africa. The one is MTN with mobile money called Momo, and the other one is Capitec here in South Africa that really disrupted the top four banks with a network of banks in the informal market. And this brings us now to really the apex of the dissertation. The need brings us to the critical leadership gap, and that's the need for the chief alignment officer. So this is a new position that I propose. Leadership alignment, as we have said before, is one of the biggest barriers to corporate adaptation. So it starts at the top. And rigid organizational structures slow or stop innovation and limit adaptability. And the CAO bridges vision and execution and ensuring leadership intent translates into action. Okay? So why do the leadership structures typically fail? Companies struggle to balance organizational dualities, and 5 of these dualities you see on the slide, where conflicting priorities create misalignment. Okay, so there's, as an example, there's the base and the top of pyramid culture. So what we call the cultural acculturation. Most leaders prioritize either commercial goals, and for this goal, they have typically a CCO, a Chief Commercial Officer, or they prioritize social impact, and then they have a Chief Sustainability Officer. And these are 2 people that are really compete with each other in terms of resources, but they fail to integrate both. And that is really at the crux of the CAO position. So the CAO aligns cultural, intelligence, business strategy, closing the gap. And this example, I would like to give Nokia and Apple, the typical Nokia leadership silos blocked innovation, while Apple integrated the strategy, enabled rapid adaptation, and the CA ensures really, or should ensure, cross-functional alignment to avoid such failures and to make more apples of the world. So the CAO ensures leadership alignment, but we also need a structured framework, and a structured framework for this execution. And this is really where the 7A framework comes in, and that's really the crux of the dissertation. So, building on the 4A model, the 7A strategy framework introduces 3 additional components: alignment, ambidexterity, and acculturation. And this ensures that businesses can integrate sustainability and profitability while maintaining scalability. The framework is designed specifically for corporate adaptability in emerging markets. And one example is Unilever Nigeria here in Africa. They applied one of the 7A principles, or 2 of the 7A principles, namely alignment and acculturation. So in a way that they do not change the prices or the packaging or the product itself, but they changed or created new last mile distribution partnerships. And in my view, this is a direct application of the 7A principle in the real world context. So now let's summarize the key findings and the research limitations. So the key findings here are structural asymmetries. I'm not going to repeat that again. While cultural adaptation and innovation help, without structural integration, sustainability impact is limited. I cannot highlight that enough. Cultural adaptation and innovation. So I suggest that the Chief Alignment Officer, in conjunction with a 7A strategy framework, offers a roadmap, but further validation is needed beyond South Africa. There are research limitations, and we need to be honest about that. There's obviously the geographic scope. Findings are based on South Africa, requiring testing in other markets. Qualitative nature, so of the qualitative nature of the interview delivered very rich, insightful data, but a quantitative study is needed to measure the 7A's financial impact. And there's obviously market uncertainty. There's rapid changes, and that could affect also long-term applicability. But as an example, I would like to give Danone and Grameen, and Danone's social business model in Bangladesh failed due to infrastructure gap, proving that cultural adaptation alone isn't enough. Okay, and I want to now get to the second last slide, which is that the research, to my mind, really challenges traditional capitalism and proposes a shift towards what I call profit-enabled impact. So traditional capitalism prioritizes short-term profits, but profit-enabled impact reframes financial success as a driver of social inclusion and sustainability. And 7A enables a shift by embedding impact into scaling and scaling impact through the business model, ensuring impact is not separate from profitability. And there you can see it, unlike CSR, which treats sustainability as a cost, where PEI, profit-enabled impact, transforms it into a profit driver, making impact a core business advantage. That's really important to me. And as real life examples, I want to give Tesla, probably not a good example in the last 4 weeks or 6 weeks, but Tesla's market domination through sustainability as a strategic differentiator. Tesla obviously didn't just build electric cars. It proved sustainability is a high growth sector, forcing competitors like VW, Mercedes, all the German car manufacturers to rethink their strategy. And this aligns with the 7A framework, where sustainability isn't an add-on, it's a core business driver. And Kotler has just introduced his fifth P to his 4P framework, which is purpose. And purpose reinforces why businesses that align profit with impact outperform their peers. So even from the Western world, from the developed world, from Harvard and so on, they understand the importance of purpose and that that needs to be integrated into the business, into the overall business strategy. And now finally, with my second last slide, let's move from research insights to real world transformation. So I'm suggesting that the 7A framework, combined with the Chief Alignment Officer, provides the tools for companies to scale impact sustainably. In my view, the future belongs to those who integrate sustainability, inclusion, and profitability. And when companies align profit with purpose, they don't just grow, they empower societies and future generations. And once again, as an example, Patagonia's market success through sustainability, they had a campaign. Sustainability can, in fact, drive profitability. So my rhetorical question to the end of the presentation is, wouldn't it be nice if every business leader saw inclusion and sustainability not as a cost, but as a next big market opportunity? And that was my attempt to contribute to that idea. And yeah, I would now welcome your questions and for further discussions.
Yeah, thank you so much. My first question is, how can this be practically implemented if if organizations want to go ahead with the 7A framework? Where do they begin?
Where do they begin? Yeah, so that brings me back to the innovation bridge. Okay, so I'm a big believer into the lean startup methodology and in the application of agile methods. So it's really a matter of testing, of conducting a number of experiments,
Mhm.
and invest as little money as possible to verify the riskiest assumption of these business models. So it's really a matter of testing, experimenting, building, measuring, and learning. So that loop. So
Yeah,
it's really
that's
embracing innovation in its core
mm,
to implement and to verify.
fantastic. The second thing is, how does the 4A model fail, and what was the reason that you want to add on to three more A's in the model? What's the benefit?
Yeah, so it was simply not integrated between the two
Hmm.
major groups, which is the top of the pyramid and the base of the pyramid market. It's obviously relevant for the base of the pyramid, right? But it didn't adapt to the market reality of the top market players. So
Right.
it is really a matter that both groups require an exchange of needs. The top of the pyramid requires access to demand because they want to produce more and want to sell more. But the top of the pyramid requires access to products, information, distribution, etc., etc. And I think this integration between the two groups was what was missing. But I mean, obviously, Prahlad is is a world famous professor, and I'm like a scholar. That's really from my today's perspective is really what I think was missing.
Okay. Yeah, great. That's a very good answer. And last thing is, you spoke about profit-enabled impact, right? So, which is your,
Mhm.
your suggestion or your idea or the ideation.
Yeah.
Can you think of any company which is actually coming closer to this idea of profit-enabled impact? Any couple of examples? Any
Yeah, look,
corporations? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of wastage in the in grocery chains and retail chains, but I probably should use the entire idea of re-commerce, i.e.,
Mm,
of stock which is not any longer used in
mm,
the top of the pyramid retail chain. So overstocked, excess stock, aging stock, shop sold stock, stock that's perfectly all right. Does one throw it away? Okay. Or does one use it? Does one use that stock to empower the base of the pyramid to basically penetrate the market, i.e., and create a non-cannibalizing new channel, but also uplift the societies that haven't been included. And that's really my personal passion. And I'm going to develop the re-commerce model in South Africa. So because it eliminates waste on the one side, instead of donating it to a food bank, which is or to a food bank, which is not a problem, which is a good thing, but just this is a typical CSR activity. You donate something, but over time, these retailers would like to reduce it. So 6% food wastage becomes 5, becomes 4, becomes 3, becomes 2, and through AI and all this software applications, you reduce it eventually, and you give less and less products to the needy because it's a waste. And
yeah.
what if you use that actually to build a business model and to develop a new market? And that's for me an example of how you turn a cost driver or a cost contributor into a profit driver,
Thank you
if
so
that
much.
makes sense.
Yeah, so it does make sense. So thanks. I think this end of our discussion. So I'll just stop the recording and then we'll have a couple of minutes to chat. Just let me stop the
I
recording
would
now.
like to show before you stop the recording, Doctor.
Yeah,
I
sure.
just want to have one more slide, okay?
Okay, yeah.
It's just really my final thought, okay? Um, and I really wanted to show that the future of business belongs to those that integrate sustainability, inclusion, and profitability. And I think innovation, adaptability, and
Mm,
leadership alignment are absolutely crucial for long-term success. And why I'm really passionate about it is not about business. It's really about economic empowerment, creating opportunity, and building a more resilient society and a better future for the next generation. Even though it sounds a little bit cheesy, but that's really what I believe.
yeah.
Thank you.
That sounds fabulous. Yeah, thanks a lot.